The Krillian warbeast snarled behind its reinforced plasma cage, its 6 eyes glowing with murderous intent. Commander Zexter stood before the containment unit. His forearms crossed in what the humans had learned was his species' version of exasperation. This, he gestured with 2 of his appendages, is a Dreadmaw, apex predator from the death world of Krillix-9. It has killed 17 handlers, wounded 32 others, and destroyed 4 million credits worth of equipment. We purchased it from black market traders who claimed it could be weaponized. They lied. Jake Morrison, the human liaison officer assigned to the Galactic Defense Force's Xenobiology Division, peered into the cage with interest. The creature was impressive, roughly the size of an Earth rhinoceros, covered in obsidian, scales that rippled with bioluminescent patterns, and sporting a mouth full of crystalline teeth that could probably bite through starship hull plating. "And you want to euthanize it?" Jake asked, his southern drawl making the alien commander's translator hiccup slightly. "Correct, tomorrow at dawn. I brought you here as a courtesy, since humans seem to have an emotional attachment to predatory species." Zexter's mandibles clicked with what might have been disdain. "Your people domesticated creatures on your own death world. Yes, perhaps you wish to pay respects to a fellow killer." Jake didn't respond immediately. Instead, he walked closer to the cage, ignoring the warning klaxons that began wailing. The Dreadmaw lunged at the barrier, its roar shaking the observation deck. Every alien in the room flinched backward. Jake didn't move an inch. "Huh," he said thoughtfully. "You scared, buddy?" Zexter's translator squawked in confusion. "Scared? It is a killing machine, it knows no fear." "No." Jake tilted his head, studying the creature's posture. "See how its haunches are tensed? Those scale patterns flashing red and yellow? And the way it's not meeting my eyes directly, but watching my periphery? That's not aggression, Commander. That's fear-based defensiveness." Lieutenant Sarah Chen, Jake's colleague and the station's xenopsychology specialist, had joined them on the observation deck. She pulled up a holographic display, her fingers dancing across the hard light interface. "Jake might be onto something. I'm reading elevated stress hormones, irregular cardiac rhythms across all 3 of its hearts, and, wait," she zoomed in on the biometric data. "It's been in that cage for 3 weeks. 17 days, to be precise." Zexter confirmed. "Why? No exercise, no environmental enrichment, constant exposure to bright artificial lights." And Sarah scrolled through the feeding logs. "You've been feeding it processed nutrition blocks. Commander, this creature evolved on a death world. It's a persistence hunter, probably used to tracking prey across vast distances. You've essentially put an ultramarathon runner in solitary confinement and fed it the equivalent of cardboard." Zexter's scales rippled with indignation. "It killed Handler Vexman when he attempted to relocate it to a larger enclosure. Because you tried to move it," Jake said, still watching the "Did Handler Vexman establish trust first? Any positive reinforcement conditioning? Or did he just try to strong-arm a terrified apex predator into submission?" The silence that followed was answer enough. Jake turned to the commander. "Give me 20 minutes with it." "Absolutely not. I will not have a human death on my record because 18 handlers have tried force. Let me try something different." Jake's blue eyes were steady. "If I'm wrong, you can shoot it through the cage. If I'm right, you've got yourself a warbeast that actually works." Zexter considered this. Finally, his mandibles clicked in resignation. 20 minutes, but the moment it charges, we're vaporizing it." Jake nodded and stepped into the airlock. Sarah's voice crackled through his comm unit. "Jake, I'm reading your vitals. Try to keep your heart rate below impending cardiac event." "Okay. No promises," he replied with a grin. The inner door hissed open. The Dreadmaw's eyes locked onto him immediately, its massive body coiling like a spring. Jake did something that made every observer's blood run cold. He sat down cross-legged on the floor, about 15 feet from the creature, and looked away. "Jake, what are you doing?" Sarah's voice was tight with worry. "Calming signals," he murmured, "making myself small, non-threatening, not making eye contact. That's a challenge in predator language." For 5 long minutes, nothing happened. The Dreadmaw remained frozen, watching. Jake sat perfectly still, occasionally glancing at the creature from the corner of his eye, then looking away again. Then, slowly, Jake reached into his pocket and pulled out his luncher sandwich he'd been saving. He tore off a piece of the meat and tossed it gently to the side, nowhere near the creature. Not as an offering but as a demonstration of non-aggression. The Dreadmaw's nostrils flared. Its scales shifted from red to a curious purple dot. Another 5 minutes passed. Jake tore off another piece and placed it on the ground, this time a little closer to himself. Then he slowly stood up and walked backward to the airlock, never turning his back on the creature. Moving with deliberate calm, the Dreadmore watched him leave, then cautiously approached the food. Phase 1 complete, Jake said into his cum. Sarah, can you dim the lights in there by about 60% and play some ambient nature sounds? Something with water, maybe wind on it. Jake re-entered with a long, flexible carbon fiber rod, essentially a high-tech stick. The Dreadmore had eaten the food and was now watching him with what could only be described as curiosity. Its scales a deep blue. What happened over the next 10 minutes would become legendary in GDF circles. Jake used the stick to play with the creature, tapping it on the ground, dragging it in patterns. The Dreadmore, its predator instincts engaged in a non-threatening way, began to follow the movements. Jake rewarded each positive interaction with more food from his pack. Then came the moment that made Commander Zexter's mandibles fall open in shock. Jake tossed the stick across the enclosure, fetched the Dreadmore, now fully engaged in what its primitive brain recognized as a hunting game with a pack member, bounded after the stick, picked it up gently in its crystalline jaws, and brought it back to Jake, its scales rippling with excited greens and golds. Jake took the stick, praised the creature with soft, enthusiastic sounds, and gave it the last of his food. Then he scratched under its chin right where the scales met and the supposedly untamable warbeast began to purr. A sound like distant thunder. Jake glanced up at the observation deck and grinned. 17 minutes? I've got 3 to spare. As he exited the cage, Zexter stared at him with all 6 eyes wide. How? What? That is impossible. Sarah was beaming. Commander, humans spent 15,000 years turning wolves into chihuahuas. We once domesticated an animal that could literally kill us with a sneeze, just because we thought it would be fun to ride on its back. Patience and understanding beats force every single time. Jake patted the plasma barrier gently, and the Dreadmore, whom he'd mentally nicknamed Rex, pressed its massive head against the barrier from the other side. So, Jake said, are we still euthanizing it tomorrow, or are we going to give Rex here a proper job? Commander Zexter's translator took a moment to process his response. When it finally spoke, there might have been a hint of amusement in the alien's voice. Human Morrison, I believe you have just become our new head of xenobiology integration. Report to your new office in the morning, and bring more sandwiches.